So my name's Alyssa. I'm a Chicagoland injector. I specialize in subtle and natural looking injectables, and I work at the Warner Institute. I love it here.
Did you go straight from after you got done with schooling? Did you go straight into being an injector?
No, I actually went to school to be a cancer care nurse.
Oh,
Yeah, so I went into cancer care for a while. I worked med surge, cancer care, turned COVID. That was crazy. And I was coming home every day super depressed, crying, and my husband told me
because
I
of the
needed to fix it.
patients, or because it wasn't your passion?
It wasn't, I am really extremely passionate about taking care of people, always have been and always will be. I think where I lost myself was I came home every day carrying too much weight of what was going on, and my husband noticed it.
Yeah.
And I was constantly bringing home that stress.
Yeah.
And so I've always loved beauty. I've always loved science. And one of my friends was like, you have to go into this, or at least try it.
Yeah.
Go to a training, experience it.
Yeah.
And I fell in love.
Yeah, because in school they already teach you all the anatomy, and then you just take additional classes for.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when you go to school, you don't barely touch on facial anatomy at all. And I'm constantly still learning facial anatomy. But I just found my calling was in making people feel really good instead of constantly watching people get really sick. And just the hospital, you just see so many people really sick or sad or die. And it just got to be too heavy for me.
Yeah.
And so now being able to be on the other end of that and be really in a positive light, I love it. Like, there's no better feeling than have somebody walk out feeling extremely confident and just like love how they look.
I kind of want to ask like the guy's perspective and the beauty industry and a woman's perspective, like you said, how men view women that get work done.
Okay, so, oh gosh, yeah. It's always an interesting one. Now, I will say, having a husband, I think it's a really interesting take because I've often asked him his thoughts on things. And originally, I think he was more so on the side of, I want everything to be natural. I don't want you to do any of that stuff. You don't need it. And as I've entered the industry, obviously, and as he sees that my job is to do this, I think that his idea of support for me is a little bit different now. And his perception has changed as I have debunked a lot of the celebrities. Yeah. He's obsessed with Carrie Underwood. And I'm like, you know how much work Carrie Underwood has done? And he's like, no.
Yeah, they just think they're naturally beautiful.
Oh, yeah, no. Like, a lot of men are completely oblivious to the amount of work that exists out there. They just know the bad filler. But typically, really natural looking injectables, you can't tell unless you're an injector.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Or honestly, surgery too. A lot of people like, this person disappeared and they look so much better. Yeah. You don't think that
they
don't
did
think
something?
That surgery.
Like, for example, Adele. Adele went from
looks so good.
I was gonna say from looking 40 to looking 30.
Yeah.
She lost 10 years.
I think a lot of it has to do with there's a lot of weight loss going on in the industry. Now, weight loss can either age you or make you look better. It really just depends. But I think that her evolution was done in the right way. She lost weight consistently over a longer period of time. And I also think that like healthy lifestyle had to play with that. But she also dabbled in injectables in a really natural way. Kudos to her injector because I think they did a really good job.
What do you think Christina Aguilera has gotten done aside from Ozempic, because that's so obvious?
Yes. She's clearly been on Ozempic. She's on her weight loss journey. And I have nothing against Ozempic. I think that there's a lot of hate going around about Ozempic. I think that there's a good time and a place for it. And a lot of celebrities are overdoing it with the Ozempic, which is creating this like skinny culture, which I'm not obsessed with. But in general, I mean, looking at Christina Aguilera, I don't think there's a lot of things she hasn't done, truly. You can tell she does Botox or some type of neurotoxin. You can tell that she's done fillers. You can tell that she's had surgery. Her nose is completely different. She doesn't have as heavy of eyelids anymore. Yeah. Her jawline's a lot tighter. So there's a lot that comes to play. But when you see somebody like holistically looking a lot better, but also thinner, less fat pads, a little bit of everything done, they probably have had lots of work done. Yeah. And just hidden away from the world for a little bit.
But I don't understand how you can lose so much weight, because I would just think that you have a lot of loose skin.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they went under the knife to take some of that skin?
I think so. And there's actually, and maybe you can find this photo at some point, but there's actually a photo of Adriana Lima, and she looks extremely swollen in her face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she is actually post-op after. There were people ripping her to pieces and saying she's had too much filler done, but I actually think that was some post-op swelling.
Yeah.
I think that she had some type of facelift and then had like some full swelling and then had makeup put on top of it. And she was out in the public eye and people were kind of like, okay, what has she had done? I think it's all fillers. I think she was swollen from surgery.
What I'm really curious about, and I'm going to know this because when I'm 40, I'm probably going to do the same thing, is how they were able to make their face look so youthful. They look better than when they were 25 themselves.
I honestly think a lot of it has to do with the provider or providers, right? So they're looking at the face, they're assessing different areas, they're finding areas that are completely asymmetrical, and they're trying to correct those areas. So a lot of the people who, if you think about it, injectables have only been around truly since the early 2000s. So, wow. Botox became very popular and FDA approved in the early 2000s. Same thing with fillers. So really, we have about 15 to 20 years of people going after injectables. But before that, like you'll look at some classics 90s movies or even early 2000s movies, people don't look the same that they used to look. A lot of people, I think that where we've gotten in the industry is a lot of people have this blurred perception of what they look like, because they're going to an injector that has the goal of making them look like everybody else. Like they're almost like cookie cutter, right? Yeah. Like got to have the same cheeks, got to have the same lips, got to have the same chiseled jawline. And I think for some people, we're now realizing that you can have these like soft, unique, refined features and be absolutely stunning and gorgeous and have a little bit of an enhancement to like truly maintain yourself in that 20s to 30s era without looking completely different. Yeah. I mean, honestly, some of the best injectables are when you look at a face and you're like, they have literally never aged. Yeah. But they don't look like they've ever had injectables. Yeah. They just look like they've never aged.
Yeah, I've seen those people that they literally cannot move their face. Yes. You just see their lips.
I mean, a great example is Paul Rudd. Have you seen like...
I don't know what it is.
You should look up Paul Rudd. Yeah, look up Paul Rudd. Uh-huh. Okay, so look at him 20 years ago and then look at him today. And I swear to you, you're going to be like, it's like he time hopped.
Why do you think the injectable business boomed? Because honestly, when I was 15 years old, which was 10 years ago, I would see my older coworkers and they were not talking about getting lip fillers. They were not talking about getting Botox. They never talked about that, and they were like 27, 20. I'm 25. I'm talking about getting lip fillers, Botox. What do you think has changed over time?
I honestly think with the growth of social media, I think we've seen a lot of rise in a lot of things. So social media can be really great for us, but can also be to our demise, right? There's all these filters out on social media. Yeah. There's all this editing. There's all the comparison. And so with that, I think has brought this big industry of transformation, right? Yeah. Everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses, right? Yeah. So I think where injectables started as more of like a true luxury and only for like the upper class and celebrities, now has entered into all the classes and has become more readily available as social media has made it more mainstream, which is, I think, a really good thing, but also to our demise at the same time. And I can say that being an injector, I think that's a really interesting like kind of take, because at the end of the day, people think when they meet me that that they either have to get filler or have to get Botox to feel beautiful. Mm-hmm. But on the contrary, I'm very much somebody who loves anatomy. I love the way that people age. Yeah. My favorite patients are like 85 years old. Yeah. I mean, truly. I think where we see the disconnect is people that get obsessed and hyper focus on every little line and wrinkle. I think replacing some lost volume after you've had a baby, or maybe you've had a big like life change and you just need a refresh. I think that's really powerful and intentional. But when you're chasing every line and wrinkle, that's when you start to look weird.
Exactly. And I feel like with body dysmorphia, dysmorphia goes to the face too, right? With body
100%.
dysmorphia, I feel like we see one thing and we go fix it, but we're not fixing the real problem, which is probably get some therapy and learn how to love yourself.
Totally. I mean, my chair is a therapy chair. Honestly, I always open conversation, and half of my day is extremely exhausting just because of the amount of conversation that I have and
Yeah.
the amount of mental load of the things that I have to talk to people about. And sometimes therapy is the answer. Truly, truly.
Yeah, because like me, I'll think of getting one thing done, and then one day I'll love it, and then the next day I hate another part of my body, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get that done. It's just like a revolving cycle.
Yeah,
If I don't get the help,
definitely a
I'm
vicious
gonna
cycle.
end up botched.
Oops, sorry. I was actually talking to my boss about this the other day. So, body dysmorphia disorder, there used to be, we as providers, we would talk about how you weren't supposed to treat people with body dysmorphia disorder because at the end of the day, are you ever going to make them happy? But there's actually been studies that have shown if you overeducate or just really, really, really highly educate people on the possibilities and the outcomes, that you can actually help people with body dysmorphia disorder, which I think is very interesting.
And this is why I personally like going to injectors that I feel that are not doing this for the money. They're doing it because they care about the patient. Because I've been told no.
Yeah,
quite a few times.
Well, and you need to be like, at the end of the day, I think there's a level of like, even as injectors, I have seen some crazy looking injectors and they have just not been told no, or they have injected themselves. I think there's a level of trust that you really have to have with your provider, whoever it may be, whether it's your hair provider. Your hair provider should be able to tell you, no, girl, don't get the bangs.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you should have a friend that's like, that outfit does not suit you well, you know? So like, just like that, I'm here to be your friend. Like, I want to say no to you because at the end of the day, I sleep well knowing that I didn't make you look crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, you know?
But I feel like it's especially with lip fillers, it's something that's gotten out of control. I feel like they get a little bit and they like the swollen look, and then they go down and they're not swollen anymore, and then they want to go back for more.
Yes.
Because they don't look how they look when they left.
Yes. That's why I take pictures for all of my patients, because when we meet for the first time, especially, it's classic. I have a patient come in, they want the littlest, tiniest amount, and I'm here for it. We do it. They come back, they want more. I do a little more because at that point we've already only done a little bit, right? And then they come back again and they want more again. And then we have to like really sit down and look at the photos and your anatomy to make sure that you actually can have more. The lips have a limit.
Right.
Everything on your face has a limit. So at the end of the day, we have that conversation of, I can take your money, but I'm not going to, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm here for you. And I always tell my patients too, if I am ever not willing to give you an aesthetic outcome that you want, I'm happy to refer you to another provider. Like, I'm never going to force you to go with what I have to say.
What are some side effects of long-term side effects of filler and Botox if overdone?
Okay. So if overdone, I will say I wrote down and just, I have some thoughts on both positive and negative, right? So we'll go with the negative first because I want to end on a high note.
Right.
So negative effects, I think one of the biggest ones is if you have an autoimmune disorder or you're being actively treated for cancer, or you just have a really, really inflamed body and you have a lot of things going on, I don't think that you should pursue filler unless approved by your doctor. And most of the time they're going to tell you that you probably shouldn't go that route at this point. I mean, I'll turn people away. I try to do a really thorough medical examination before going ahead with doing any filler or Botox, because at the end of the day, these are medical procedures and these are all medications.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest risk involved is a couple things. One of those things being that you can actually go blind from filler. So I think a lot of people don't know that, but you can go blind from nose filler specifically. You can go blind from forehead filler. You can go blind from piriform filler. So it's just really good to know those things, because at the end of the day, that's serious. That's super serious. And so I usually have those conversations with my patients. I don't do nose filler for that reason. I don't do forehead filler for that reason. There are providers that do. would I maybe do nose filler one day? I don't know. I want to sleep at night.
Like, I don't want to take that risk.
And I also work for a great rhinoplasty surgeon. So I don't know. I
Just
always
get the job done.
Yeah, just get the work done. I also have seen some really great nose filler, but honestly, for the consistency that you have to like go through for that process, a lot of times I'm just like, if you're really wanting to commit to something in terms of changing your nose, you probably are going to want to do the rhinoplasty eventually anyways. Just save your money and do the rhinoplasty.
Right.
But with that being said, another downside to like long-term fillers, you can have latent onset reactions to it. So your immune system can kind of mount a response to filler. This is for those people that have autoimmune disorders, or I actually had this happen to me. I'll send you a picture at some point. I was in New York for a training for Cadaver Lab, and I developed strep throat. And when I had strep throat, my body mounted a response to the strep throat, but it also mounted a response to my filler. I hadn't gotten anything recently. These were all injectables that had been done the year prior, but I had a Jay Leno chin. My chin blew up. And my lips blew up.
Insert picture here.
Yeah, no, I will definitely provide the picture.
What?
I looked crazy. Like when I tell you, I was trying to convince this trainer at a program that I swear that I do natural work. I looked insane. Yes. I looked botched. And I just took some Pepsid and Benadryl and wrote out my strep, and I looked so much better. But yeah, that can happen. You can have like a latent onset reaction to filler products because they're foreign bodies.
Right.
To end on a positive note for Botox and fillers, I also think there's a lot of positives to it. So there's that perception of yourself, which I think is really positive. Right. There's also there's actually like true science behind using Botox for depression. So there's something called the negative feedback loop, which is when you are able to make an angry face or a sad face, your body then perceives that as you're angry or sad, right? Just consistency with that. But when I take your ability away to do that, your body doesn't know how to be so angry or sad.
Right.
So there's this like negative feedback loop that goes on, and your body starts to realize that you're actually a little bit happier, and then pushes that. It's kind of like, okay, you can't make an angry face, so I'm going to make you less angry, less sad. And it's constantly pushing this like feedback to your brain, and you then are a little bit happier and a little less depressed. Now, this is actually clinically studied, so I think it's just really cool. Like people often say like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better with my Botox. But there is like a level of science to that.
No, and not only that, but I feel like when I get Botox, my skin for some reason just looks
glowy.
better. Yeah, glowy.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to Botox that I think a lot of people don't realize. One of those things, especially if you get a Botox or a neurotoxin, that Daxify has peptides in it. So it's really good for making that like really glowy skin. But in general, Botox, Dysport, all the neurotoxins do a great job of relaxing the musculature. And I find that your skin just looks better.
Yeah, so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, but I did hear, you could tell me this is a myth, but that if you do too much Botox over time, you weaken the muscle, and that you're supposed to be working the muscle out.
Yeah, so I would say, honestly, I actually made a note about this. I think too much Botox, especially in the forehead, can look weird. Like over long periods of time, too much Botox, too heavily placed in the forehead, you start to atrophy that muscle. And I think we've all seen it, but have you ever seen that like older woman who's been doing Botox for a long time? They have like a really, really, really thin forehead almost. Their skin looks a little crepey and thin. There is some level of muscle atrophy that I think comes into play, but these are high doses, really consistently over a long period of time. And I will say, I think there is some level of letting your body return to some natural movement that is really healthy for you, like letting your body kind of like wash through that Botox before you add more back in. I have so many patients that try to come back in before they're supposed to.
Would you say you're not a fan of forehead Botox?
I actually would say I like it on the right candidate, but I honestly don't do it on everybody. I don't think everybody's a good candidate for it. And I think having some natural expression and movement there is nice. I mean, do I love a good frozen forehead? Sure, right?
Yeah.
But I also think for people who have really heavy eyelids, it's not for them.
Yeah, I've
you know?
personally been a victim of the forehead Botox. Because I don't know if it's genetics, but I have really fine lines
Mm-hmm.
going across my forehead. Like, so if I do this, they mark. I also have this. She put some here, but then she also went all over my forehead because she saw those lines. And then I noticed my eyelids kind of drop. So I was looking it up. I was like, why? Like, I just felt like I had such a lazy eye. And it said that it was forehead Botox. I was like, I'm never doing that ever again.
Like, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I like to treat really high on the forehead. There's a line of convergence here. I like to stay at or above that line. And I also really overly educate my patients. I say, we're going to go light here. And I can always bring you back. Foreheads are a beast. Like, honestly, if I have to bring anybody back for touch-ups, which I do all the time, by the way, very normal in this industry, foreheads are the number one thing I have to touch up, because I would rather you have some movement and have to have it touched up than me make you feel too heavy and you're stuck with it for 3 months.
Right.
That's a beast.
Another, well, you were doing some positives of Botox. I read about getting Botox in your head for migraines.
Yes.
As somebody that suffers from migraines, chronic migraines, I think that's such a, which I don't understand how it works, though.
Yeah, I honestly can say I stay in my own lane. So I'm not clinically certified for migraine Botox. So with that, if somebody's coming into me and I can offer them an aesthetic result that might help them with their migraines, I'll offer it. And I can also do I can do Botox to the masseter muscles. But when it comes to like a true medical issue like having migraines, I know my place. And if I can't offer you an aesthetic outcome that can give you, some relief, then I will refer you to a neurologist, because it'll probably be more affordable anyways. Yeah. And sometimes it's covered by insurance. Yeah. So with that being said, until I have that training, I stay in my lane with that stuff. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they're coming to me for a different reason and I'm not trained properly on that. So with that being said, can you? Absolutely. There's so many different uses for Botox. It was actually the first injectable, the first use for Botox was actually in like the 1970s. They used it to help with blepharospasms, which are when your eyelids like twitch. Mm-hmm. So with that, it's come a long way, obviously, but there's still a lot to learn. And I think there's still going to be so much to learn as it continues. This industry is changing all the time. Like I'm kept on my toes.
Okay, do you want to talk about changing all the time? I just literally recently, probably like 5 months ago, I learned about, what's it called? PRF?
Oh yeah, PRF or Easy Gel. There's
Gel.
There's so many different ones in the market. So there's PRP, which I call like PRF or Easy Gel's like lazy cousin. Like PRP is platelet rich plasma. It helps to replenish the collagen. It hangs out in your body for a few days, replenishing collagen. I'm not obsessed with PRP because I feel like you need a lot of treatments and you look really, really puffy afterwards. Then there's PRF, which is a step up from PRP, platelet-rich fibrin or fibrinogen, and it provides more collagen building over a little bit longer period of time because it's a slower centrifuge rate. And then there's Easy Gel, which is my bread and butter. I love Easy Gel so much. It's a biofiller, which means you take your blood, spin it down on a centrifuge, and then you create your own filler with your albumin, which is a protein, and then your PRF mixed together.
What would you use the Easy Gel for?
I love it for under eyes. Under eye filler is not my fave. I'm going to be honest. Easy Gel is like the number one treatment in my practice. Everybody wants under eye correction. Everybody feels like everybody's tired of feeling like they look sad or tired all the time. So I'm often treating with Easy Gel to the under eyes, nasolabial folds, all those pesky areas where we've seen filler land wrong.
Yeah. Oh, do you feel like it makes you look more youthful?
Yeah, it builds collagen. It really thickens up that tissue. It's not going to completely replace filler, I think. There's going to be probably some more advances down the road. But for right now, I think that Easy Gel is my go-to for a lot of patients, even if they're not a good candidate for filler. But I would say there's still such a place for filler, and filler is such a great option for people who have genuine hollows but have thick enough tissue in that area. If you were to ask me like what train you should hop on in 2025 going forward, it would be bioregenerative medicine. And
what
I
is
love
that?
it. I love it. It's building collagen production. It's using not only your own body, but also external sources to really build that collagen to replace and replenish the actual structures of your face in a really natural way. So there has been so many advancements in terms of collagen production with Sculptra. I think you may have heard of that before. There's also things like Radiesse on the market. There's so many new ones coming out as well. But they all fit in that category of bioregenerative medicine. And when I say I'm so excited for the future, I'm going to a training in Seattle
So
next
what
week
is
about
this?
it.
A machine, a pill?
It's
injection?
injectables. It's injectables. There's a couple other things coming out on the market I hope to get my hands on. There's something called PDGF, which is platelet-derived growth factors, which is another one taking the industry by storm for the under eyes and for skin regeneration. If you haven't ever tried microneedling before, I would say that's another big one that's really just been taking the industry by storm. There's been a big shift towards skin health lately. One of your questions was, where do I expect this industry to go? Do I see it possibly failing one day?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I don't.
It's only going to get more.
I think it's going to grow. And even if it changes, I think it's always going to be here because there's always a level of vanity, right, that we're going to have. There's something called the lipstick theory that was back during the war. And women would still spend a little bit of money on just their favorite lipstick.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be that level of like wanting to feel pretty and belong in society. And I think that it's just going to change in the way that we do it.
Yeah.
I hope, and what I'm seeing is a transition into more health driven beauty. So one of your questions was about NAD and just like wellness injectables, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, what is NAD? The only reason I asked that question is because there's like this viral clip of Hailey Bieber and Kendall Jenner getting some IVs.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm going to NAD for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And then she was basically saying that it'll keep her young.
Yeah. So there is there's injectables / infusions out on the market. It's called NAD. And basically it's responsible for helping with cellular repair. So think of it as helping keep your body's cells from constantly aging. It's trying to turn back time. It's trying to clean out all the gunk, because cleaning out all the aging gunk is what ages you, right? Like over time we lose collagen production, we lose fat, we lose just muscle, we lose so many different things over time, and it's because of our breakdown, like that degeneration, that denaturation of proteins. And so with NAD, the idea is that we're keeping our body in this like cellular growth phase, which in turn helps to clean up more things. It helps to in turn like create longevity. It's considered like more of like a fountain of youth. Like that's what people are rushing to hop on. Yeah. The only caveat to that is if you have cancer cells in your body and you don't know about them, you have to be really careful, because could you increase the replication of those cells? Absolutely. So I think something that we have to do better of as an injectable and wellness community is overeducate the population on the other side of that.
Right.
A lot of people are rushing to do this, that, and the other, but you should know the repercussions, such as I could make cancer worse that I don't even know about.
Right.
So it's a really good thing to know.
How would somebody go check their cancer cells? Do you have to be referred by your doctor?
So, I mean, as far as NAD therapy goes, I think when you walk into wanting to do something like that, do people always get like full body scans? No. There's no way to know that you have cancer and tucked in every corner and crevice of your body unless you have extensive work. You can even have like that Prenuvo body scan. You can have all these things and still miss something.
Right.
So being knowledgeable about what could be missed and still being willing to do it, I think at the end of the day is something that you'd have to factor in as a risk factor, right? You're trying to live longer, but then if you make cancer cells replicate faster. Are you going to live longer? I don't know. So just something to think about. If you're in general a pretty healthy person, I'd say just run it past your provider, but make sure you trust that provider.
But I noticed that they already sell it on the market as a pill though.
They sell it as a pill. I've heard, and I have to do more research on this, but I've heard that it's not well absorbed.
Okay.
So
just get the IVs with the right provider.
Well, and I think that there's a level of making sure that your, NAD is natural in your body too. So making sure that you're not throwing off the entire equilibrium of your body just by like, oh, I'm going to get this injectable. There's a lot of wellness or claim to be wellness clinics out there. And I will say, I don't even offer NAD here yet, and hope to one day like do a lot of research in the wellness community. I mean, I read Peter Attia's book called Outlive. If you're ever wanting to nerd out over longevity, read that book. Highly recommend. But there's a lot of factors that come into play, like blood work, testing, symptom management. Like if I were to go and do a bunch of wellness injectables, I'd do it with a really reputable functional medicine provider.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily go to like the med spa on the corner and just get like whatever infusion or injection.
And I feel like because it's so accessible now and everybody's trying to promote everything, people just go to the first place they see.
Totally. I'm definitely somebody who's like, okay, you're paying so much money to get an IV infusion when you could eat better, drink more water.
Okay, come on me. I was like,
but I mean, we can do a lot in the wellness community in terms of like obviously going to get an IV and things like that. But we also as a society like suck at just like proper nutrition.
Yeah, when it was festival season, I was going to get IVs because I was like, I am not gonna.
You're like, I'm depleted. Yeah. I mean, I definitely like next week I'm gonna go to a full training on like. And it's going to be injectables, but also wellness. And they're going to do IVs and stuff like that. So I'm not against it by any means. I think you just have to make sure you vet your provider and make sure that they've actually been trained in prescribing those medications. Right. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be prescribed something that's going to like make you so depleted in one nutrient in your body that now you're like hospitalized for something. Yeah,
because when I would go to get my IVs, I would just look at everything they had there. And I was like, okay, I'll take this one. And it had a bunch of vitamins. But I also, like you said, I don't know if I'm deficient or have too much of this vitamin, because I heard that having too much is also not good for you.
Yeah, and not to mention that you're like, you're taxing your liver, you're taxing your kidneys. I think there's something to be said about the supplement industry in general, which is it's not well regulated.
Right.
I mean, you can pretty much go to any corner now and get Ozempic, and I think that not everyone needs to be on Ozempic.
Yeah, and they'll sell it to anyone.
Yeah, I mean it's there needs to be some level of, I think, just like follow through, and I'm here for any medication that's going to be helpful for the right person.
Right.
But just like Botox isn't for everyone, or fillers aren't for everyone. You have to be picky about your provider. Are they going to educate you on all the risk factors? Are they going to walk you through like, okay, if you start taking this nutrient like or a vitamin or injectable, what long-term effects could you see? Or are they going to notify you when they find out that there is some random long-term effect that nobody knew about, Right. So just something to think about. I mean, this industry, unfortunately, there's two different things to really note. And it's that I think there's a lot of money hungry people in this industry. There's a lot of people that want to do a lot of good in this industry too. So you have to find hopefully a provider that wants to do more good than wants your money.
Yeah. Luckily, I've had my providers that say no to me.
And there is a level of like, that's a good provider.
Yeah.
Got to be able to say no. And if your provider is saying no, you also have to be willing to listen. Like, don't get mad at them. Cool, thanks. Like, I needed that. Maybe we just needed to hang out.
Yeah.
I have some patients that I've seen before, and they come in my chair, and I'm like, okay, we've seen each other a little frequently now. There is a level of injectables that I can get you to that I think will make you look better. But there's also a level of you're spending so much money, you may want to consider surgery or sometimes therapy. Like, truly, if you're in my chair and you are...
If you can afford my injectables, you can afford therapy.
Well, and I think there's like a level of like, if you need to trauma dump, I'm here for it. But there's also like, if you feel like you need to be in my chair just because you need to be in my chair, do you really need anything, right?
I wanted to ask you, what are influencers setting unrealistic beauty standards?
Depends on the influencer.
Have you seen this girl went viral because she did a facelift over in Turkey? Have you seen it?
Was she like 30?
No, she's like 24.
Oh my God.
I just wanted to know why I got a facelift so young. So I'm going to explain to you guys the backstory. So last year I traveled to Korea and I got bone shaving, which is basically when they shave down your bone and your face kind of has like a smaller like beeline shape.
Okay. Nurse injector.
So I see this nurse injector explain her face anatomy and why she felt like she had to do that. And he's basically saying that she didn't need that. She was way too young.
So she's 24. She looks a beautiful young woman, 24. Maybe she didn't need anything in the first place. She didn't get a facelift. She went to Korea and got a bone shaving to enhance her jawline, which is not a very popular procedure here for good reasons. It's not really very useful for most people, and it's probably most likely unnecessary and less in extreme circumstances. Now, if your skin is now loose in your jaw, but then you go to Turkey to get a mid facelift, those are two different areas. So I'm just confused by her. Sounds like she got a couple procedures that maybe she didn't need, and then definitely the second one, she went to Turkey and got a procedure to address a complication of the other procedure, but it's in the different part of her face. Let me know in the comments, do we ever need to do a facelift on someone who's in their 20s?
Yeah. I mean, in general, I will tell you this. I think another like point we have to hit home to people is if you are 20 years old, there is a level of change that's still going to happen in your face. I'll also share some pictures of what my face looked like when I was 20. I had such a baby face. I had such a round face. You're still a child at that point. Like, you're 20 and you're an adult, but you're a child. And your face is a lot more round. You have a lot more fat. And I think that a lot of younger people see these influencers and they're like, I need that.
For example, Kylie Jenner, she was 19 getting lip fillers and lied to everybody that.
Yeah. And I think that there's some level, I have treated young patients, so I'm not going to lie and say I haven't, but I tell them often your face is going to change, and there is like such a small window of what I can do to make you look a little bit more enhanced without looking completely different. And I'll often turn people off of fillers or turn people off of treatments really quickly. Like those are patients I'm often saying no to, or we are doing the tiniest little bits of treatment for like more of a under eye hollowing with easy gel. So like something really natural, like your blood, or if you are getting lip filler, it's half a syringe of lip filler, like really, really subtle things. And it's like, we have the conversation of, do you actually need it? Like, you're super young. Yeah. There's also a lot of conversation about how influencers, especially with like somebody like Kylie Jenner, you know, there's so many trends that people go through, right? Yeah. So I think you as a person have to decide, okay, do I want to be trendy with my face or do I want to look timeless?
Right.
Because there's a difference.
Like the people that jumped on the buccal fat removal trend.
Yeah, and people have the buccal fat. I can't say this word.
Yeah, my bad.
I'm like, now I'm blinking. Buccal fat removal, buccal fat removal, whatever. Yeah. It is now something that people will come in for treatment to make everything look less gaunt or hollow, because now people are losing all this weight and they don't have any fat. Yeah. And they look older. So with that being said, whenever I tell my young patients anything, I'm like, we need to keep it really conservative. I'm a conservative provider in general when I need to be. I think that waiting until you're at least 24, 25 before even like considering injectables, I think is like my recommendation, unless you're like young 20s like me and I had quite a significant amount of movement and sun damage from letting myself wear SPF, not wear SPF, and also bake in the sun too much / the tanning beds. Regret that. But I started Botox probably around 23, 24, and I could show you I had quite a bit of movement and quite a bit of fine lines at rest. Yeah. So with that being said, there's always going to be cases where people are the exceptions, but I think that there's this big perception drift of like, you have to start doing things, and you don't. Right. You don't. And you don't want to look 35 when you're 22.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the pressure of social media.
Totally. I think that there's also some really great influencers out there. Like, I think there's been a lot more celebrities, like Megan Fox has been willing to admit that she's had stuff done. But she also has body dysmorphia disorder.
Right.
So like there's this level of like we have to be open and honest with people. I try to always be open and honest with everything I do, but I work in the industry. But in general, I think it's just important for people, like especially my kids. Like I don't want them to one day be like, why don't I have the same chin or anatomy as my mom? And I'm like lying.
Right.
Right? Like that's confusing to them. And I want my kids to grow up knowing that they don't ever have to do anything I do, but that they have the option to do it if they ever want to. I think that there's two sides to everything, right? And social media can be a beast. I'm sure even in anything that you do, social media is a beast.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times, a lot of people confuse the Facetune for their people's actual beauty until you see them in person.
I will say one of my absolute favorite things that I did was 3 years ago. I decided that I was never, ever going to put a single filter on any of my photos ever again. And now I never was somebody to edit my photos, like over edit my photos, but I wasn't ever going to put like a face changing filter. I wasn't going to do anything besides like one of those silly, goofy Snapchat filters that puts like ears and a tongue or whatever. Right. But I was never going to put anything like that because I didn't want my perception of myself to change. Yeah. And I'm so happy that I have never done that because I haven't done that in 3 years. I have not turned back since from using any type of filters. I have so many patients that come in and I want to look like this, and it's themselves with like a nose filter. Yeah. I'm like, okay, but you don't even look like yourself in this photo. Right. You know, social media
the filters have gotten insane.
The filters have gotten insane, and also I know we've all seen people from like high school, and you're like, you do not look like your profile picture. Like you look so different. I want people to look at my profile picture and then meet me and be like, oh my God, I've met her before. Yeah. You know, or like seen one of my videos and been like, oh, like same anatomy. Right. You know, you get to see skin texture up close. I'm extremely honest about my acne journey. I'm extremely honest about anything I've ever done. And I think that a lot of my patients really appreciate that. What do you think has been like since starting, what do you think has been your biggest perception change being in like the nightlife industry?
Well, I will say the industry has influenced me in my confidence a lot. Before being in the industry, I never thought about changing anything in my face, but because one, I was making the money, and two, everybody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get a nose job. I wanted to get my lips done, filler, Botox, everything.
So I would say it has like a big like influence on
a big influence, especially if the money is there, you're gonna do it.
And I think that's like that as a provider too. I think that there's a lot of providers out there that will do it just for the money, and you can tell those providers because they have patients with overfilled lips. They have patients that have really pointy chins or really big cheeks. Like there's a difference between finding a provider you trust and is going to preserve you versus finding a provider that's going to just take your money. Right. And I will say it really is interesting in the nightlife. I have mad respect for you guys because honestly, I feel like it could be really challenging to be like looked at in that certain light for long periods of time and have to be like an entertainer.
Personally, I don't think so. I feel like if I was a Las Vegas bottle server or even Scottsdale, they take it way too serious. I don't know if you've ever been to Scottsdale.
I have.
But those bottle servers, they have their boobs done. You can tell they have a lot of work done in their face. And so it's in Las Vegas. Here in Chicago is a little bit different. I feel like here in Chicago, they go more for the BBLs. Okay. And
do you think men in Chicago like it a little bit more natural in general, or like what would you say? Like what is?
I think men claim they like it natural, but they're liking Instagram pictures of fake girls. I'm like, so which one is it? But they like to claim they like the natural.
I think that there's a level of like men that are like, ooh, I would take that woman to my family party and settle down with her versus like, she would be fun for the night. Like there's like that level of like difference, right?
It really depends on the man, but yeah.
I'm sure that also there's just like woman to woman pressure too. Like men aside, we put this like certain pressure on us to feel like perfect or to display this like idealistic idea of, or this, what am I trying to say, like this perception of, you know, how perfect we are, how perfect our life is. Social media, they get to see, you know, this like glimpse into our life when really it could be like total chaos.
Yeah,
and
it's not all glitz and glams.
yeah
No, absolutely not. I feel like the industry can be very catty. It's a lot of competition within the girls. And no, it's a lot of, it really depends where you work, but a lot of girls, they're not your friends. You know the song, the Drake song, No Friends in the Industry? I'm like, literally.
Honestly, I will say in general, like not even just the industry, I think in my industry too, at least, and just as a female, it is so hard to find other female friends.
And genuine friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially as you've grown in terms of if you grow as a person or if you're becoming more successful or you make more money, some people take that as competition instead of being happy for you.
Exactly.
Which I think is, it's so hard to find people that are genuinely not going to talk about you behind their back. Behind your back.
I mean, if you find somebody, it has to, I would say it would be somebody that doesn't see you as a threat, somebody in a completely different industry. Yeah.
And the thing is, I think that it's really interesting that women do that. I think men to some degree have like, sure, competition. Like they say men fight for women, right? Like they see like men,
But
other
they
men as
don't.
competition.
Because if you think about it, us women, let's say me and you, we're co-workers. We're not even friends. We're just co-workers. You break up with your boyfriend. If I go fuck your boyfriend, you would be pissed at me. If we were guys and I did that, whatever.
Really?
Yes, I think guys are so much more chill than women.
My husband's like, I will actually murder.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that there's a level of like the personality too, but like I definitely locked down somebody who he would fight. He would
Well, I guess I should have put it as in like if you hooked up with somebody.
Yeah, I think that it's so funny. I've like literally met my high school sweetheart and like we're married and have kids. It's just so interesting. Like I didn't ever have to be in like that dating scene, and I find that it would be so awkward and challenging for me. And in general, I also find that like finding female friends is really awkward and challenging for me because I've had like bullying in the past. I've had where people pretend to be a friend but see you as competition. I've had a lot of that. And I've also had like where I thought somebody was like really ride or die and then just ended up not wanting to support me.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, I think, cattiness that I sometimes just don't get from male friends. But with that being said, I think there's also a level of distance that I keep because I don't want to like cross, like make my husband feel uncomfortable because I have like a bunch of male friends.
Exactly. I'm the exact same way, but I feel like it's easier for us to make male friends because they're not judgy.
Yeah.
They don't care if I'm making $1 million or if I'm poor. Like they don't care about anything I'm doing. They just want to vibe.
Yeah.
Just want to have a good time.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said about like a group of people you can just like sit in a circle with and laugh about the funniest like random things. Like having genuine conversation these days is actually harder to come by than you think. Because social media, everybody's putting out like, oh, they're out doing this thing. And then you're out with people and you're like, can you put your phone down? Or can you, like the best nights I ever have, I have not even posted a single picture because we're like goofing off and I'm so in the zone of like being present.
Right.
And I just find that it's hard to find that with people these days.
Because I feel like a lot of people do stuff for the media, for social media. They're not going out to have fun. They're going out to show people that they have fun.
Yeah.
Which is completely different.
It's like, that is such a crazy thing. Like if I were to sit down and have a conversation with people like our like ancestors, then I'm gonna be like, okay, so in 100 years, we're all like posting about what we're doing and showing people where we are. They're like, why?
Exactly.
Like,
and
why?
as somebody who's obsessed with like social media, I think like that's my bias.
Do you find, and I don't know if it's just me, but like I'm like, it's like a love-hate relationship. Like it brings me a lot of clientele, don't get me wrong. It's such a big job and it like stresses me out. Like I get anxiety from my social media, just like having to post and figuring out like editing and all that stuff. And I literally have people that help me and I still find it so time consuming.
I personally enjoy editing videos and posting, and like when I had my other podcast, I enjoyed reading comments and replying. But then I also just want to use social media to see what other people are posting.
Yeah.
swiping and swiping. But then that's like, to me, that's, I should only be using social media to promote myself, not to scroll and waste time, because
Yeah.
that's a negative in my book, that I just scroll and don't get anything done.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that there's like a lot to be said. I mean, I've even fallen a victim to this, where you're like, oh, I'll just like look at it for 5 minutes, and then
Yeah.
like 2 hours later, you're like, where did that 2 hours go?
Exactly.
Black hole. Like it's
Yeah.
meant to suck you in. It's meant to consume your time.
And the algorithm has just gotten so much better that it's bad.
beastly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, we like don't even give people the time of day. Like literally, you give people like 3 seconds to see if they. Actually, it's like a second and a half
Mm-hmm.
to see if you even want to listen to them about what they have to
Exactly.
say. And you're like, next.
And it's like, one thing I've noticed about social media is like, something that catches my attention span is like, are you a good speaker? And are you beautiful? And if you're not, then scrub.
Honestly, I think for me, I like getting caught up in those and a lot of my social media is motivational content or educational content. So you'll see a lot of injector education on my page. You'll see a lot of motivational content, like when you're scrolling on my algorithm. And I love when people are like, get off the couch. The only person holding you back is you. Like
I'm
like those
skip.
people.
Skip.
I'm like, okay, I will.
I'm like,
Right
okay.
after this one.
Skip. No, mine's like, I feel like you're using it for good, because like you said, you have motivational and you have educational. No, mine's just like story time. You know?
You're like, I just want to be a chismosa.
Seriously, professional.
Would it be a turn off if you knew your man was getting injectables?
No, I actually told my man that he should get some Botox. It's not a turnoff. I just think that he's 10 years older than me,
Okay.
and I could already see some fine lines. I'm like, if you could just prevent them from
Getting deeper?
getting deeper, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's men in the industry, in my industry, are definitely taking the industry by storm. Like, you have to think when you ask, like, oh, how is the injectable world going? Like, I think that it's just only going to grow because men are now interested in injectables. I have a lot more men coming in for jawline filler, or they want under eye correction. They like want to look better, but they don't know where to start. I mean, these are also the same men that don't even use face wash. They use body wash for their face. So like,
Right.
there's a lot of education that needs to go on.
Right.
But with that being said, men are the best clients. Like they just show up, they let you do whatever, they pay the money, they listen.
Mm-hmm.
Females, they're harder.
Because we want more. We want
Yeah.
more.
Females want more, they question a lot more. Men just like have a level of trust. Like they're already walking in knowing that they're a minority in this
Yeah.
field. So they like they're wanting your opinion,
Right.
and they really trust that. Whereas females, I think, especially if you're a female who has gotten injectables elsewhere, you already have a preconceived opinion. You already have like a bunch of other questions, which is totally fine. But I just find that male clients show up when they're supposed to. They're really consistent, and they just go with the flow. Like
yeah.
they're just chill.
Yeah. What has your husband got anything then?
No, he hasn't gotten anything done. He's also 29. I feel like men start later in general.
Yeah.
Like most of my clientele, most of my men that I inject are like late 30s, 40s, 50s, lots of 60s. And with that, I say, I mean, whenever a man gets older, in my opinion, I'm like, I love an older man. I love when men get like a little bit of crow's feet and have like one little worry line.
Yeah, but I also love a man that takes care of themselves.
I
That's
do
very
too.
well groomed.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I want a well-groomed man, but I love, like, I don't want my man to have no lines or like no. How do I say this? I don't want them to be like so perfect they're not a little rugged. Like, I like a
Don't
little
be prettier
ruggedness.
than me.
Yeah, don't be prettier than me. Don't
Yes.
be don't
Yeah.
be more high don't be more high maintenance than me.
Yeah, but
With that being said, I love when husband and wives come in for their appointments. I get that all the time. Love that. Like, they come in for a little appointment, they get their Botox or they get whatever injectables, and then they go out for a date. Like, how cute is that?
period.
I love it. I love it.
One day I'm gonna get my boyfriend to join the.
Yeah, find you a man who takes you to your Botox appointment and gets his own Botox.
Yeah, I mean, he goes to get his nails done with me, but Botox.
You're like, he's like, babe, what color are we gonna get at my toes? And you're like, oh, we're not going to that appointment today, baby. We're gonna go get some
We're
Botox.
getting Botox.
Yeah.
We're getting Botox today.
How big are the needles?
Taking
What
your
are
B
they
card.
like? I mean, most men are like truly the ones that I've met that are really turned off by injectables. They're also like really afraid of needles. But I will say, once people sit in my chair, they realize it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay. I had a male patient the other day. I like completely like built out his jawline, and he texted me later. He's like, I want more.
Yeah,
Please.
my
More,
boyfriend
please.
actually wants to get the jawline.
A little
But
more.
I think he wants to get
jawline.
he might do lipo.
Mm.
But he says he wants to do it, but I don't think he will do it. So when I go get my nose done in Mexico, I'm gonna be like, all right, this place has lipo.
Just make sure wherever you're going, because I'm not turned off by the idea of you leaving the United States to get anything done. Just make sure wherever you go, you A, have vetted them on before and afters, and B, that they have really good clinical staff that can help you work through any complications. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, even the best of the best in terms of surgeons, in terms of injectables, in terms of anything, still has complications. So if you're going to go outside of the country, I'm not obsessed with the idea, but if you are, make sure that you have a way of getting back there if you need anything, and B, an alternative plan. Because I've seen infections in breast tissue. I've seen infections in different places. I've seen botched work before.
Yeah.
And it really is like, truly, it can be really detrimental if they're not willing to manage it for you.
Yeah, I will say when doing my research, I'm not going for those popular Instagram, TikTok surgeons, because I just feel like they're just taking everyone and anyone, and they're doing the same nose on everyone. I'm like, have you seen that girl? I don't know if it's a girl, but the surgeon that does the
like
nose,
big swoop up.
yeah, and then every single time they record a video,
Like,
I'm like,
yes. And those videos go viral, and it's not because people like the work.
no, it's because they're wondering why people keep going to them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering.
There are people in other countries that literally have cleft palates and barely any nose because of infections and all these things. And we're over here changing our face shape into a Who
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Americans
Well,
are wild.
Alyssa, thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This
I'm
was
super excited.
so much fun.
Yeah.